venue, the area where it's all going to be happening as far as President Ramaphosa is concerned, going to take the witness stand when the Human Rights Commission July Unrest Hearings resume in under an hour from now. He's going to be testifying, as we know, Thulasizwe Simelane as the responsible head of state. You can pass the buck, you can throw the ball around, you can move from pillar to post, but in the end, the commander-in-chief has to be the one to take accountability.
That's what it's about, Gareth, and the build-up continues ahead of the start of the testimony by President Cyril Ramaphosa. A number of his ministers have come through, or former ministers who occupied specific portfolios at the time and have since moved on, including the now Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who was the Minister of Defense at the time. Ayanda Dlodlo was the Minister of State Security at the time, as well as Begicele. It's all about peeling at these layers of this onion of accountability and trying to understand and grapple with these riots that left no less than 340 South Africans dead and cost the economy some 50 billion rand. The insurance, state insurance special risk company, Sasria, dubs these riots from July last year as the most expensive riots in the history of the country. And you can only imagine, I mean, for that to be the tag attached to these riots, it just tells you how ruinous these riots were, and they are still dealing with the claims even as we speak. But we are no closer to fully understanding who is ultimately responsible for all of this. The panel of experts led by Sandy Africa says the cabinet should take ultimate responsibility. President Cyril Ramaphosa says they acknowledge, as the cabinet, acknowledge and accept that responsibility. But then what? What does that mean? What is the content of acknowledge and accept that responsibility? Let me bring into the conversation News 24 political editor and author of 8 Days in July, Juanita Hunter, along with Kavil Singh, as well as Jeffrey Weeks. Thank you for coming through, Juanita. And I imagine that as you come here, you've done the work in going into the book that the three of you wrote, reflecting on your own experiences, the experiences of other journalists. But what are you expecting coming here with? What do you expect to hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa? What's the missing link from all the stories and the picture that you've painted in your book?
Sure. There's the biggest thing that stands out for me, Thulasizwe, is when did the president receive the first intelligence brief that alerted him that there was going to be unrest of this nature? If you follow as evidence that before this probe by the South African Human Rights Commission, the then Minister of Intelligence, Ayanda Dlodlo, said intelligence was plentiful and they had given it in advance, whereas the Minister of Police says he had seen nothing during this time. In our investigation, we found that there was intelligence briefs as early as May that were very specific about what was going to happen. Did the president know this? That's very, very important, because there was a specific finding made by Professor Sandy Africa and the expert panel that said, why only 6 or 7 days after the unrest started, then only did the president, who chairs the National Security Council, call a meeting of the National Security Council? Why didn't he do it sooner? The body was defunct up until it was a little too late. And so these are the questions that the president has to now answer, beyond the sort of sound bites and sort of the broader statements around accountability. Did you receive these intelligence briefs? If you didn't, why not? And what are you going to do as a result of not receiving it? And if you received it, what did you do as a result?
Yeah, and I suppose partly in trying to show, I don't know, the content of taking responsibility, the president has moved, as we see Mondli Gungubele, the minister in the presidency, arriving, who's now actually in charge of the function of intelligence, because part of what the president did shortly after the riots and the reshuffle was that he took the function of intelligence into the presidency, and for a while he was responsible for it until just a month or two ago, about 2 months ago, passing it on to Mondli Gungubele. Anyway, Juanita, what I was going to ask you was about these structures that are supposed to have coordinated, as you say. You found in your investigation, in the work that you did for the book, and so did Sandy Africa and her panel, that there were intelligence products, at least from state security perspective, the SSA, but that's not the only intelligence structure. Talk to me about the breakdown in what I was saying earlier on, that there's no shortage of acronyms.
Yes.
Nut joints, prof joints, NICOC, NSC, etc. But in the end, we were none the wiser.
Yes.
Talk to me about that breakdown at that level of the various structures where intelligence could have filtered from state security to crime intelligence, but just simply didn't.
So the one thing we know about the July unrest, so there was a massive failure by the security cluster. And so the question, I suppose, this panel and a lot of the other work that we've done and as Professor Sandy Africa was to get why. Why was there a failure? And there's multi-tiers to Thulasizwe. The first was the political level. The fact that ministers were at odds with each other is a very, very important reason as to why we saw a lot of the chaos, because on the top structures of the security cluster there was no political clarity. Then you had ministers fighting each other, then you had ministers fighting with senior officials, in the prime example being the police minister Behikele and his then general Kehla Sitole being completely on two different pages and wavelengths about the unrest. He testified to that at this commission. Then you had the silos and the breakdown in trust between intelligence structures themselves. And the reality of it is that it was pre-unrest problems that surfaced there. For example, the lack of stability within the State Security Agency. At the time of the unrest, there was no permanent Director General of Intelligence. There was no permanent head of domestic intelligence. Crime intelligence was without leader and was not funded for a while before that. And I mean, defense intelligence seemed to be the only one that was stable at that time.
Yeah.
And so what happens now is the president has promised to stabilize the officials of these entities. He's appointed a DG at intelligence. He's probably going to refer to that. There's a new police commissioner. I'm sure he's going to refer to that as action that he has taken. But again, reforms is the important thing, and we have not seen that in the months after the unrest.
Yeah. All right, Koneta, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. It's going to be an interesting day, us trying to find out a bit more detail in terms of what it entails to say we acknowledge and accept the responsibility that is placed on our shoulders. That's Koneta Hunter there, Gareth, sharing her insights into this particular story as we wait for the president to arrive for the start of these hearings.
One thing to accept responsibility and accountability, but I like the way you phrased it. What now? So what? It's one thing to take the responsibility, but how are we going to fix this going forward? Thulasizwe Simelane, quite right. We're waiting for the president to arrive. The hearing's set to get underway 9 a.m. this morning, where we are heading up to 8:15. The president should be arriving in the next few minutes. The moment he does, we'll take you back there again. And don't forget, of course, live coverage of the hearings proper beginning at 9 a.m.